Hey guys, how's it going? Today's video is going to be a recent reads. Recent might be a little bit of a stretch, but we're gonna go with it anyway. I realized that I haven't done a wrap-up since March, and I was gonna do one at the end of April, and then most of the books that I had read were already in a vlog, so I decided to wait a little bit so it wasn't so repetitive. And basically, it's just been several months of, I'm going to read a few more books and then I'll do a wrap-up. Oh, I might as well finish this book and then I'll read a wrap-up. Oh, I should get to more of my TBR and then I'll do a wrap-up. And here we are. Now we're up to, I think, 14 books, but as always, there are going to be timestamps in the description if there's a specific book that you want to hear about. But let's just get into it. These are the books that I read from April to June. The first book I read was She is a Haunting by Tran. This is a gothic horror set in Vietnam. Our main character is Jade. She just graduated high school and she's relying on her father, who no longer lives with them, to help pay for college. I really like the way that it's worded in the blurb. Jade has one goal: to survive living a lie with her sister and their estranged dad while he fixes up a decaying colonial house in Vietnam. If she can be straight enough, Vietnamese enough, American enough, then college and freedom will be hers. Trigger warnings for some: internalized homophobia, graphic bug-related horror, body horror, racism, mostly in historical context like colonialism and stuff, possession, violence, and murder. On one hand, the story is about just a girl trying to fit in with her family while keeping everybody at arm's length. Like, she wants to be accepted for her bisexuality, but she's not confident enough to come out to them, even though they don't do anything to make her think that they wouldn't accept her. It's just, that inherent fear of coming out. She's also trying to keep her father at arm's length because she still hasn't forgiven him for leaving the family. And she's trying to be civil with him, but still let him know that he hurt her and that, he didn't handle things the way that she thought an adult should have. But also not ruin her younger sister's relationship with their father, because her sister was young enough to not have fully understood all of the hurtful things that went on, when their father left. So she's trying to not get in the way of her sister's relationship with their dad, but still trying to protect her from when she assumes their father will just inevitably let them down again. So on one hand, you have all of these complicated family dynamics, interpersonal relationships, just Jade herself as a character going through a lot. And then at the same time, she starts believing that the house is haunted, or the house is haunting. Like, she thinks that the house itself is a force that is doing something. She thinks that it's giving her strange nightmares. There's more rot and decay than there should be. There's a lot of bugs, but all of these things that have completely logical explanations, fixing up an old house. There's a lot of questioning and uncertainty, which I think comes across really well in a horror, but a lot of it is, well, was it sleepwalking or was it a possession? Is this a nightmare or is this a haunting? Is this dead bugs because it's an old house and bugs die sometimes? Or is there something really weird going on? I ended up rating it a 9 out of 10. This book is gross, but in a really fun way. If you don't like bugs, if you don't like that type of body horror, maybe go into this one with some caution, but I found it was really good at just making you feel uneasy. For a little while, I was reading this on my break at work, but sometimes when I'm on my break, I like to have a snack. So, just maybe be considerate of what and when you're eating if you're going to be reading this book. I thought that the horror vibes were just so well done in so many different contexts. Like, some horror books, I find there's moments of horror. This, I felt like the horror was just ever constant. Even when nothing scary was happening, you could just feel it beneath the surface. Even in some moments when we are learning about her Vietnamese heritage and we're kind of learning about some of her ancestors, they talk a lot about colonialism and how that is explored with an undertone of horror, rightfully so. I just feel like overall, the author really pulled off what it seemed like they were trying to do. Every moment that you could tell they were trying to make it gross felt gross. Every moment that felt like it should be unsettling or confusing felt unsettling or confusing. I just had a really great time with it. Next are a few books that I read in, I think I called it a busy work week reading vlog or something like that. I'll have it linked down below where I kind of go more into my thoughts. But the first book I read for that vlog was Hard Times by Charles Dickens. I've mentioned before, I'm a big fan of Charles Dickens. I love his social commentary, his satire, and this is very Charles Dickens. This one is focused on the Industrial Revolution, and he's making the point that industrialism and measuring your success based on productivity and efficiency, output, all of that, really sucks the joy and the spirit out of life. Trigger warnings for some era-specific just ignorance and racism. Like, he describes the soot stains on the buildings as face paint on a savage, and there's a character that goes into hiding in the circus and he disguises himself with blackface. Moments like that. Like most Dickens books, the plot really doesn't matter. It's just a vehicle that he uses to explore these topics and demonstrate his points. Even though this book takes place almost 200 years ago, so many of the lessons that it's speaking on still apply today. And I think that's a really fun thing with Dickens, is that he makes such harsh social commentary of the time, but it's never just about that time. Hi, Comet. Like, he's talking about factory workers and the rise of unions and, you know, era-specific things, but those same thoughts apply to things like the rise of AI and the fad in the last couple years of hustle culture and monetizing your hobbies, the worsening wealth gap, the focus that, you know, if you're not constantly working and producing for society, then you're not a benefit. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Like I said, this is very typical Charles Dickens. It's very much in his style. So if you like Charles Dickens, I would highly recommend this one. Next, I read George's Marvelous Medicine by Roald Dahl. This is a children's book. This is just a silly story about a boy named George whose grandmother lives with them and she has to take a medicine every day, and he decides to mix her a magic potion for her medicine, and silly things happen. You know, very typical Roald Dahl. I never rated it because I didn't really feel the need to. It's less than 100 pages. I read it just for the fun of it. I didn't get anything from the book, but I wasn't meaning to. Then I read Grandma's Little Secret by Becca C. Smith. I've talked about this book a couple times since then. Again, I have it in that vlog, so if you want to see my thoughts in the moment, that's where you'll find them. We're following a young girl named Emma who realizes, mostly through like psychic dreams, that her grandmother is a serial killer, and she also now believes that her grandfather is in severe danger. Trigger warnings for murder, suicide, implied sexual abuse against a child, mentions of domestic abuse, blood, and gore. I rated this a 9.5 out of 10. I loved this story. Not only do we get Emma's perspective as a child who is both very imaginative but also kind of psychic, and how in some moments you can't tell whether it's something actually paranormal that she's seeing or whether she's just, you know, being a little kid with an overactive imagination. Seeing her try to navigate, you know, her grandmother being a serial killer and now a threat to her grandfather, but you also get the perspective of her grandmother and her delusional mind and why she's killing people and why she's justified killing these people, and her kind of grappling with the decisions that she's making. She's not just a mindless villain. And I think that to have like a horror thriller told in the point of view of a young child and the murderer themselves was so fascinating and fun to read. If you don't know, this book is inspired by events that happened to Becca when she was a child. Her great aunt murdered her great uncle, and she witnessed some things, was in danger of herself, like things got really scary. And even though this is a fictional story, I think that having that much of herself in this book, you can really feel it. This book is also just very Becca. Like, the way that I describe it is very like 80s kids on bikes, if you know what I mean. There are so many references in here, like Star Wars, there's like a Narnia-inspired element going on. There are so many things that if you didn't know who wrote this book, you would be able to guess that it was Becca. This book does get dark and gory, it's scary, it's sad, but there's also so many moments of just like childlike wonder and magic and hopefulness. And I think that the way that those all meld together is done really, really well. And like I said, I absolutely adored this book. Highly recommend. Next, I read an ebook, and that was The Second Death of Edie and Violet Bond by Amanda Glaze. This is a historical fiction paranormal story. We're following these two young women who have the ability to kind of peer through the veil of death, pass through a little bit, communicate with spirits, etc. Their mother also had this ability, but she has recently died under mysterious circumstances. their father thinks that they had something to do with it. Witchcraft nonsense, you know how it goes. They ran away from home and now they are with this traveling group of psychics and performers, basically because it's that or nothing. They don't have any skills, they don't have any money, and they are kind of trying to solve the mystery of what happened to their mother while also just, you know, trying to survive in the world. Trigger warnings for lots of death, lots of grief, lots of religious trauma, also a lot of sexism. It's set in a time period where, you know, women are sent to asylums for wanting birth control, and topics like that are very heavily discussed in the novel. I had a really fun time with this. I gave it an 8 out of 10. The plot, I think, was only fine. It was very predictable in a lot of ways. I found some things were a little bit too convenient. There's also this subplot with a love interest that I just didn't really care about. He is the one reporter who actually cares about women's rights and will, you know, report something in this one weird newspaper. Like, that kind of guy. It's fine, it's just very cliche. Even though the characters are a little bit older, it does feel very YA, but for these kind of topics, I do prefer more of an adult tone. There are a lot of discussions about how with these traveling groups, a lot of them are women, and even though most of them are performing, they're not genuine psychics, they need this to escape from whatever they're dealing with. You know, some of these women are just kind of weird, so instead of being sent to an asylum for just being yourself, they ham it up so that they can at least get paid and support themselves. A lot of them will give these performances, I can't remember what they call them, but basically they say that they're being possessed by a spirit of a man, and then they give these really beautiful, eloquent speeches about, you know, like, there's one about farmers' rights, and there's one about just, like, important topics that nobody would listen to coming from a woman. I feel like a lot of this book was just giving the author an opportunity to talk about women's rights and where things are lacking. We have two characters who are lesbians, they're in a relationship together, and even though some of their friends can understand the idea that they don't want to be with men, they can't support the idea that they do want to be with women, and how it's just one step too far for them. There are a lot of conversations about how women of color, black women specifically, fall through the cracks of these conversations, and how, of course, they want black women to have rights, just not as many rights as white women. Like, a lot of things like that I feel like aren't usually explored in this type of book. I just thought that overall the author didn't shy away from some of the more difficult conversations, and how, you know, just because we're all fighting for women's rights doesn't mean we're all fighting in the right way or fighting exactly how we should be fighting. I'm also just a big fan of paranormal books in general, especially when it comes to the discussion on real psychics versus performance psychics. Like I said, the story itself wasn't my favorite thing, but the world, the writing, the characters to a certain extent, and just the way that the author kind of explored the story, I really enjoyed. Then I read Girl, Serpent, Thorn by Melissa Bashardoust. This was one of the books that I read for my snake-themed reading vlog with my pet snake. I will leave it linked down below. This is the story of Soraya. She is a princess whose touch is poisonous, so she is hidden away in the castle so that she doesn't accidentally harm anybody, put herself in danger, etc. It's very inspired by Persian mythology, Sleeping Beauty, and Rappaccini's Daughter. I gave this a 9 out of 10 in the moment. It hasn't stuck with me that much, so maybe it's more of like an 8.5. But either way, I really enjoyed it. I really liked the world building. I'm not familiar with a lot of Persian mythology, but I really enjoyed those elements. It's also sapphic, which was a pleasant surprise. And I really liked the other major characters. Like, her twin brother is about to get married, and he's marrying their childhood best friend, their childhood mutual best friend, who she used to have a crush on. And their dynamic I just thought was really well done. It wasn't like the cliche YA, we had one silly fight and have never spoken about it for all of this time, and now we're enemies for no apparent reason. Like, they're still friends, they just don't talk anymore because life has separated them, but they still get along. Even just her relationship with her family and how strained it can be at times because of their circumstances, you can tell that they love each other and that they're always trying to do what's best for each other even when they're wrong. This book had some really fun banter, there were some badass moments, and I just had a great time reading it. Next, I read A Snake Falls to Earth by Darcie Little Badger. I absolutely adored this book. We're following two different characters. Nina is a Leap and Apache girl. She's in our world. She is living with her family. She's just a perfectly normal girl. Her father owns a bookshop. Her mom travels a lot for work. Her grandmother, who lives a few hours away, is getting quite sick, and the family is worried about how to take care of her. They were also following Ollie, who is in the spirit world. He is a snake spirit, and like all cottonmouths, he is kicked out of the nest and is now just trying to, find his place in the world. All he wants to do is just nap on his rock in the sun and not get in anyone's way, and he makes these friends, and it's so cute, but not necessarily all sunshine and rainbows. And of course, eventually, Nina and Ollie's paths intersect, and they both have to work together to save the people they love. I gave this a 10.5 out of 10. I had such a fun time with this. I am already so excited to reread this, even though I only read it a couple months ago. Ollie is one of my all-time favorite characters I have ever read. Not only because he is just so lovable on his own, but as somebody who loves snakes, he is such a perfect representation of a snake. He is a scaredy cat. He is a precious little baby. All he wants to do is hide whenever he gets into any danger. Like, this is what snakes are truly like for the most part. I went in not knowing much, but this book was everything I wanted and more. I loved the vibes of it. I loved the characters. I loved, the storytelling itself. Absolutely adored this book. Like I said, 10.5 out of 10. Highly recommend. And the final book I read in that snake-themed reading vlog was A Drop of Venom by Sajni Patel. I would describe this as an Indian-inspired feminist Medusa retelling, or reimagining. Trigger warnings for this one: rape and sexual violence are huge themes in this. They are brought up often. General violence and brutality, mostly against women. Gore, graphic violence, and abusive relationships. I wanted to like this more than I did. I ended up rating it a 7 out of 10, which is good, but I was expecting to really love it, and there were some parts I just couldn't quite get into. I thought the plot was a little bit too all over the place, but also somehow too linear. It was very much like, okay, well, the character has to go here, and then they have to go here, and then they have to go here, and then they have to go here. There wasn't really a lot of twists and turns. It was pretty predictable. None of the obstacles in their way really felt big or important. And while I liked the characters, there wasn't as much nuance as I wanted. The bad guys were just bad. They were doing bad things because they are evil, horrible people, and they don't care about anyone else. And the good guys, the few mistakes they made were with rose-tinted glasses, and everybody forgave them because they are good people, and they always do the good thing, and they always stand up for people in the right way. It was just a little bit too black and white for me. I feel like this book almost said the right thing too much. I enjoyed my time reading it. There are a lot of elements that I enjoy. This book is part of a series. They're interconnected standalones. I think the next book follows her sister, and it's a different reimagining. I don't remember which one off the top of my head. I don't think I'm going to continue the series, but I definitely enjoyed my time with it. I just don't think I need any more. But like I said, 7 out of 10 is not a bad rating. That's a 70%. I think I just wanted so much more, and so it's a disappointing 7. Then I read a few more ebooks. I read The Guest Children by Patrick Tarr. This is a horror, I guess. It takes place as World War II is ending. Our main character is a man who stayed home from the war because he is his older brother's caretaker, and he wasn't able to leave his brother. And he's looked down upon by a lot of other people because they think that he's a coward. They think he should have gone to fight. They don't understand why his brother isn't able to take care of himself. And while he's looking for other work, he sees an ad for somebody looking for a private detective to locate these 2 missing children. These 2 kids were with the waves of English children that were being brought to Canada to escape the war. They were either orphans or they were in areas that were no longer safe to live, stuff like that. And these 2 children got sent to Canada, and no one's heard from them since. Trigger warnings for grief, losing your family in a war, body horror, graphic violence, gruesome injuries, that kind of thing. I only gave this a 6 out of 10. I felt like I was just always waiting for something to happen. Sometimes horror can get away with having a kind of weak plot because the focus is so much more on what else is happening. But this had a weak plot and not a lot of good horror. I wasn't very scared. He saw these mysterious apparitions sometimes, and that was it. The people were a little bit too weird. He was staying in this isolated inn that was you had to truck through all these woods to get there, and things were a little bit trippy, but it just wasn't quite enough Like, it just all felt like it was building up to something actually scary, to something actually shocking, and it never came. Our main character was also just a little bit too frustrating. He was just so dumb and naive, and in a horror, especially one with this mystery element, I want a main character to be asking questions. I want a main character to be doing things, exploring things. I don't want a main character that just sits around and be like, nope, not my problem. Because this character is how I'm experiencing the rest of the world, the rest of the horror. So I want them to stumble into traps. I want them to do things. But he was just so boring. Like, there's one scene early on when he gets to the inn and he's at the beach and he's looking in the water, and he looks down and he sees this face under the water. Like, this person under the water staring up at him with lifeless eyes. And his first assumption is, ooh, that's scary. I'm going to walk away and pretend I didn't see it. You're here looking for missing children, and they're talking about, these people might have mysteriously died. And you see what you would assume is a body, and you just walk away from it? Like, he's just like, oh, I guess I'm seeing things. I'm going to just leave this beach now. There were some big moments that were revealed in kind of a sloppy way. Some of the twists relied on the fact that the narrator just straight out lied to us, and so we had no way of knowing this thing. And I don't mind a dishonest narrator, again, especially in a horror where the questioning and that sense of unease is a big element of it. But if you tell me this is the way things work with no hint that that could be, more to it, you can't then turn around and say, ha, I tricked you because this thing happened because it didn't work that way. Well, you didn't surprise me. You lied to me. Those are two different things. Like, it didn't feel earned. I didn't have an awful time reading it. Like, I did enjoy it for the most part. I gave it a 6 out of 10, which is, leaning positive. I just wanted more, and the elements that frustrated me, I just found really frustrated me. Next, I read Odd Thomas by Dean Koontz. This is the first book in the Odd Thomas series. I'll be honest, it took me a really long time to figure out if I liked this or not. We're following the character of Odd Thomas, first name Odd, last name Thomas. He has some psychic powers, mainly the fact that he can see ghosts. He can communicate with them. They can't speak back, but they kind of communicate a little bit, and it's usually ghosts of the recently dead, and he will try to get them justice, help catch their killers, etc. He has some other minor abilities that honestly are just for convenience sake. I read this because this is my aunt's favorite author, and out of all of his books, this series kind of intrigued me the most. I really like following characters that are dead, or characters that can see the dead, ghosts that you can't quite tell if they're dead or not, like things like that. I really enjoy that trope. I really enjoy all of the different things you can do with it. So the premise ties in to some of my all-time favorite tropes. It's weird and kind of questioning reality, which is so up my alley. But the writing, I couldn't quite figure out how I felt. I ended up giving the book an 8 out of 10. The writing style is kind of quirky, a little bit too self-aware, in a way that sometimes just really rubbed me the wrong way. At no point do I forget that I am reading a book. Sometimes in books you can kind of lose yourself in the world and the characters, like they can kind of come alive a little bit in your mind. This, at every single moment, I was aware that there is an author typing this down. And I don't necessarily like that reading experience. And some of it was just a bit too much. It just rubbed me the wrong way. It was arrogant, but not in a negative way, just in a very, a little bit too full of yourself, tone it down a little bit way, but also self-deprecating enough that it wasn't necessarily in the way that always got on my nerves. I don't know. I've now read 3 of the books. I'm on the 4th one now. And I'm definitely getting more used to it. And there are so many lines that I love. I'm reading them as ebooks through my library on the Libby app, and you can highlight passages in the app. And there are so many times that I'll highlight a line because I really love it, or it's just so perfectly worded. But there's just something about it, I can't quite put my finger on it, that just doesn't always work. So even though I absolutely adore the writing rubs me the wrong way. And I I don't know, it's just very conflicting emotions about the writing of this series. I might as well just lump them all in together. So the first book I gave an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a great introduction to the character. I really liked all of the side characters, the way they interacted with him. It's a little bit exaggerated, like everybody loves him because he's the quirky little weirdo, but if you can put that aside, the characters are fun. I liked a lot of the ending, but the actual, like, climax, the moment itself, was very weak. And this is a reoccurring theme. The second book, Forever Odd, I gave a 7 out of 10 because this ending was even worse than the first one. I feel like Dean Koontz is very good at setting up all of these obstacles, but he doesn't know how his characters are going to overcome them. So something else happens. The endings are so anticlimactic. The character resolution is really good sometimes, but the actual plot resolution, not even worth your time. I'm going to spoil the ending of the second book. I'm not going to get too into it, so skip ahead like a minute if you don't want to hear it. I'll put the timestamp here of when to skip to. But the plot of this one is that these villains have kidnapped his friend and are hiding him in this abandoned casino. It's not important right now. So Odd Thomas is chasing them and he finds their hideout and, you know, they've rigged it to explode and his friend is trapped and the bad guy is so, like, out of their mind that they can't be reasoned with. And then as they're doing their villain monologue, a mountain lion comes and eats them. Odd does nothing. He just runs away and you hear the sounds of the main villain getting eaten by this mountain lion that was not around. Like, they mention at one point early on that there's, you know, paw prints in the dust of this abandoned casino and, you know, they're out in the desert and there's, you know, wild animals and stuff. But, like, it wasn't something that was properly set up of, like, oh no, where's the mountain lion? The mountain lion's gonna get you. No. It was just, oh my gosh, this is the moment that surely there's nothing I can do to save myself, and hump. Oh good, problem solved. Let's go rescue my friend. And the author tries to justify it with his, like, psychic powers and stuff. He says that, you know, sometimes things just work out for me because of my psychic magnetism. And it just comes across as very lazy writing. The sixth book I gave a 6 out of 10. The ending was equally ridiculous. This one, the whole plot itself was pretty ridiculous. He's also in another location, so we don't have the same cast of lovable characters. Even though I'm enjoying the books less and less, I think, like the character enough that I'm going to finish this series. I think there's 6 books. There might be 7. I don't remember if the one that I'm thinking of is actually, like, a full-length novel or if it's, like, a prequel novella or something, because there's a few little novellas he has in between that I don't think I'm interested in reading. But I am going to finish the series. I'm going to eventually do a video about the series as a whole. We'll kind of get more into each book and all my thoughts. But yeah, for now, 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10. I'll let you know if the trend continues. And the final book for today is Oversea Understone by Susan Cooper. This is the first book in the Dark is Rising sequence. I know for a lot of people this series is a childhood classic, but I never read it before. I enjoyed it. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I will continue with this series. Before going into it, I heard a lot of people comparing it to the Chronicles of Narnia, and I see the comparisons, but I don't think I necessarily agree. It has a similar tone, but we do stay in the real world. There's just these other elements coming into the real world with that kind of fantasy vibe. The overall feeling, though, of just a group of kids, these siblings, going on an adventure, you know, good versus evil, and these kids trying to, you know, make their way through, was very fun. The characters were fine but flat. Again, the good guys are good, the bad guys are bad. I can't tell the two brothers apart, like I can never remember which one's which. I really don't have a ton of thoughts on it. It was exactly what I expected. I'm going to continue with the series. It's not a priority for me, but I am interested in continuing. It did exactly what I thought it would, and I had a good time, so 8 out of 10. And there you have it. Better late than never, but that was my wrap-up from April, May, and June. If you've read any of these books, let me know down below if you agree, disagree, what your thoughts were. I'd love to hear all that. Or just what was your favorite book that you read in the last, I guess, 3 months. My favorite thing about BookTube is just talking about books, so feel free to do that in the comments. Overall, I'm pretty happy. I would have liked to have read a little bit more, but It's been a busy couple months and I'm happy with most of the things that I've read. So that will be it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, please hit the like button to let me know and subscribe to stay up to date with the rest of my videos. I post new videos once a week, usually reading or writing related. So I hope to see you guys next time. Until then, have a great day. Bye!